Country and Western music is about loss. Soul music is also about loss. But the difference is in country and Western music, they've lost. They've given up. They're just at home whining about it. In soul music, they're struggling to get it back, and they haven't given up. The Sapphires is up next on Rediscovered Movies. Hello, welcome to a new episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. And today, we have a special guest on the podcast. She's a writer, scientist, teacher, and tech enthusiast. Please welcome Hodan.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to do this review with you. So, yeah, thank you for everyone for tuning in. And yeah.
All right, it's a pleasure having you here today. So, the movie that we'll be discussing today is a fun one. So, the film that we'll be talking about is The Sapphires. The Sapphires is a 2012 Australian musical comedy slash drama that's directed by Wayne Blair, who's known for doing Top End Wedding and Firestarter. The film is based on a 2004 stage play of the same name by Tony Briggs, which is based on a 1960s girl group of the same name that included Briggs's mom and aunt. So the film stars Chris O'Dowd, who's known for doing Bridesmaids, Jessica Mauboy, and Deborah Mailman. So essentially, the movie is set in 1968. It focuses on four young, talented Australian Aboriginal girls that learn about love, friendship, and war when their all girl group, the Sapphires, entertain the American troops in Vietnam. So the film was released on August 9th, 2012 in Australia in theaters. It was a huge hit in Australia. It made 2.3 million on opening weekend and 14.2 during its theatrical run. It came out in North America in March 2013. So overseas, it was not a huge hit because it made 2.4 million domestic and a worldwide total of 20.4 million during its theatrical run. In terms of reception on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 91% critic score and a 76% audience score. So with the consensus, it says, while it's plenty predictable and sentimental, The Sapphires also has an irresistible feel-good vibe, winning music, and charming performances to spare. The film is available on demand, so check your local provider. So, first category we'll go into is first discoveries, essentially how you learned about the movie, your initial thoughts, and has it changed since then. So, for me, I first learned about the film when I saw the trailer of it at the time in theaters, I believe. So it was kind of dubbed as the Australian version of Dreamgirls. So I didn't watch the movie at the time, but I was kind of interested, but then other movies came out at the time, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then when it came down to choosing films for the podcast, I saw this one was a recommended one to check out. So for me, my thoughts on the film is I enjoyed it because it's uplifting. It's sort of a feel good film that's set during the war in Vietnam, and I loved that it had serious issues with the racism and Indigenous Australian rights, but it was still able to be uplifting and you root for the girls to succeed at the end. So, Hodan, for you, how did you first learn about the movie and your thoughts about it?
Um, for me, I had no prior knowledge about this movie. You were the one that recommended this movie, actually. And that was my first time ever seeing this movie. I went on to check the trailer. I immediately got a dream girls vibe, the commitment kind of vibe from it as soon as I saw it. But I thought I'd still give it a go because I'm very much into movies with musicals and songs and soul. So that is what initially attracted me to the movie after seeing the trailer. Um, Now, after seeing the movie itself, that was a bit predictable because I feel like seeing the movie now at this time is different from seeing it at when it was airing. So things have changed, like in terms of as well my preferences in movies have changed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not really into musicals as much as I used to be before. But it was still a pleasure seeing this movie because what made it for me was the soundtrack. It had really
Mm.
some classical musics and really nice music that I have still have on my playlist, such as What I'm At, like What I'm At. I heard it through the grapevine. Who's Loving You? So I've really enjoyed the soundtracks in this movie. Also, on top of the musical performances, I really like the actor Chris O'Dowd. I really think he did a great job in this movie. And as you mentioned as well, the whole issue about racism. It was really interesting seeing this in Australia because I don't have as much as knowledge as I had about the racism that's happening in America and around the world. I did have an idea about the Aboriginals, but it was really interesting seeing
Mm-hmm.
racism from that side of the end. So yeah, I did enjoy the movie.
Yeah, because like probably like under like a different a director or film, like the tones like could have been clashing, but luckily here the filmmaker he was kind of able to balance the two without being like too like somber about those issues while
Mm.
also not making fun of it at the same time as well too.
Yes, I mean the comedy twist to it was also great. I feel like it just gave that kind of relief. It wasn't just a, sad movie that's just discussing about racism. I did
Mm-hmm.
like the hints of comedy in it, and I think that's what made the actor that they picked for this movie a great addition to it because he he
Yes.
he brought in the comedic relief in the show, and there were parts where it was supposed to be sad, but he was the one bringing the comedy, hence making it feel a bit more light.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so like yeah, like I thought yeah, like we could go on to the next section, highlights what we liked about the film. So I really yeah did to pick off that I loved the performances yeah from also Chris O'Dowd because clearly like he does a good job like with the comedy aspects, but is also able to bring in the dramatic elements
yes,
as well too. Like especially like
yes,
towards the end of the film, like after when like he got shot and yeah I thought it was able to do those aspects effectively and yeah I loved yeah the girls like they did a good job too because I believe what's her name yeah Jessica Mauboy like who plays the young one I forgot
yes.
her character's name yeah because she's a professional singer while the
Oh,
other
okay,
yeah so parent and the other ladies they are more like theater actors from what I could tell, but yeah, they were
okay.
able to yeah, like balance like each other out and the chemistry was there as well.
Yeah, no wonder they made her the lead at the beginning, I guess. So that's the one that they made her the lead in the beginning, isn't it? The youngest one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yeah, yeah. She did have an incredible voice, and it just immediately, as I was watching that scene where Chris was picking who to be the lead, it just
Mm-hmm.
gave me a flashback of Dreamgirls, where Beyonce and Jennifer Hudson were being swapped. So
Mm-hmm.
it gave me that kind of feel.
Yeah. Cause like I also like too like there was the scene towards the end where like Gail she sings late. I thought that, that was nice even though
Yes,
like even though if you
yes,
remember there was a scene where like she had like the question mark while like the other ladies had
exactly.
a
A role to
trademark to
fulfill.
it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There was just a question mark, and I was wondering when they were going to assign her a, a proper role. Or, I mean, she doesn't necessarily have to have a role, but I mean, it would be nice to know for us viewers what they were going to do with her, because up until then, she was just the controlling, angry older sister kind. She didn't have much to it other than that.
Hmm.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, her character development was amazing. Seeing her, take um, a seat back and kind of like, being more in tune with her emotions, and seeing all of that character development in her was great.
Mm-hmm. Because I would say like she's more like the mom, or you could say the
Mm,
manager of the groups. It doesn't
yeah.
necessarily have to be like the oldest member of the group, but pretty much like someone that is willing to like, bring people together, but also like, you know, tell people like what to do and that sort of stuff. So that's what I feel like her role was based off
Yes,
the group.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was nice to see how each one of them had a role, but it was also kind of like the things that I kind of disliked about the movie. I think that will be discussed in the next session. I'm going way ahead of myself,
Yeah.
but just to remind me to kind of mention on that, because I feel like that kind of it kind of interlinks those 2 points.
Hmm.
But if first sticking to what I did like about the movie, yeah, it was. I think the actors and the actresses were really great. I think they really brought the movie to life.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. And also too, like another like highlight, I would say, yeah, is the awareness of the racism in Australia, because it was interesting that they were dubbed as black, even though
Yeah,
they're not.
they're
Eh,
not exactly.
yeah, and like with Kay's like arc, where apparently it was like revealed that as a kid she was taken from the authorities to be raised by white families. So
Mm,
apparently that it was a thing in Australia at the time. So it's called stolen generations or stolen children, were essentially mixed or like light skinned kids. They were taken like away from their families to be raised by white families. So I didn't knew about that obviously, but yeah, that was kind of like heartbreaking, especially when it explained why Kay and Gail don't get along.
get along.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that was also a very interesting thing to learn about, how Kate was taken, and how she's part of the stolen generation, and just because because of her light complexion, she could pass out as a white person.
Hmm.
I mean, I knew this kind of also mentality exists in America, and
Yeah.
like back in the days, they would always do this. And there was also like a book that I recently read. I don't know if you know about it, but it's called The Vanishing Half,
Mm.
and it talks about two like twins. One is a dark skin, and one is a like of a lighter complexion, and she moves to another side of the country, and she does not really tell everybody that she's black. She just
Mm.
passes out as a white person. So in the beginning, Gail was no Kate, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Kay was doing this in the beginning, and I think maybe it's because the government or whoever stole her did this to her, and because she was part of the stolen generation, she kind of accepted that as well. And when you see Gail or the other siblings knock on the door, and she's with the other white ladies,
Hmm.
and when the other white lady comes in to ask who it is, and she's really confused about why she's talking to
Yeah.
someone who's not white,
Hmm.
and then you can see that she gets embarrassed, and that just that kind of reminded me of that book, and it was just really sad to see as
Hmm.
well that she just kind of accepted this new lifestyle of hers.
Yeah, cause we see like clearly like with Kay, she's kind of like conflicted with this
Mm,
because the girls they kind of like like single her out like when they visit her like at her home, like she's hanging out like with her white friends, I suppose, and then yeah, like honestly, yeah, like, it was kind of like heartbreaking, I guess, with the
mm,
backstory of that, but I guess like it was nice too that the film kind of like addressed like those issues, but without going like too
too deep
like
into
dark.
it, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah, I think that would have been for me, that was the highlight of the movie for me, because it was a new information that I didn't know was happening in like Australia. It was interesting to find this. It was interesting to find that, to find more about that part of Australia and the racism that was happening at that time. So
Yeah,
really interesting.
absolutely. Yeah. So I like also too, it's kind of like brief awareness into like what happens in the music industry. So the girls
Mm,
like I guess their goal really is to sing like for the troops in Vietnam, but it's not like they want like a record deal
yes.
out of this. So like it was just nice that even though like you see these sorts of like movies and shows before, like it doesn't go like that route.
Mm,
And like when so the girls like at the beginning they sing like the country music,
yeah.
but then once Dave gets into the picture, like he makes them sing soul music because I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yes, it was. I did think also the country music choice was also very interesting for me initially, because I don't think it really highlighted or showed any of their, vocal abilities. It was just very
Mm-hmm.
mellow for
Mm-hmm.
me. But I think what Dave did was kind of tell them, like, this is what's popping right now. This is what's famous, and this is what's going to make you reach the top. And I think he
Mm-hmm.
just went with what the audience or what the public wanted at that time, especially if they were going to go to America and Vietnam and perform for Black folk. They
Mm-hmm.
would they should give them what they would like. And imagine them singing country music and going to Vietnam. I would have, like, the show wouldn't have even ended. They probably would have been booed off the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cause yeah, like it was just yeah, like you say, like I guess with the soul music, kind of like highlighted their like voices
Mm,
more. But I did
yeah.
kind of had like some like issues with that choice, which I'll go into the
Yes.
lowlights section. But
Yes.
yeah, like it was just nice that like with the music in general, like it kind of like brings like awareness of like the music at the time. And yes, with the classic songs like that you mentioned earlier, I thought like that was nice too, but I also had some issues with the music choices as well too in the low light section. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Especially when Dave was saying, "Can you make it blacker?" That was for me, like, I didn't really, agree with that. He could have worded it out differently, obviously, but I think that's what they were trying to do with this character, Dave. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think they were giving him, and even though when he has to make those bad decisions, the viewers like you and I would most likely not abandon him or hate him too much for what he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that was the point of having him do these kind of bad decisions at times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And for me, like a final thing that I'll note for the highlight section is I love the scene when the girls sing for the wounded soldiers, like at the
Hello?
tent. Like the scene when they are singing for the the wounded soldiers. I forgot at
Yes.
what point, but yeah, like that was quite emotional to watch.
Yeah. Was it when they were singing in their native was that a native song?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I did really enjoy that as well, because it was a native song, and it was just very sad. Really loved the song and their voices, and it was a really somber kind of a sad scene, but it was also very entrancing moments. I really liked it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So, is there anything else you want to add, like for the highlights section of what you liked about the film?
I would say the first time they performed, the first time they performed the gig in Vietnam, and they sang "What a Man." It
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting to see, how it started off with the audience not even listening or not even paying attention to them. And as the girls were getting more confident and more into the song, the audiences were reflecting on that as well. And you could see them standing up and cheering for them. It was really refreshing to see that, as I really like movies that highlights success stories. So that was really interesting to see. I think probably the highlight of the whole movie for me was that part, and also the part where the guy assigns them roles. I just found that bit funny and interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So those 2 points I would say were the highlights of the movies for me.
So, like, we could go on to the next section, the lowlights, essentially what we didn't like about the film. So, like, I think I mentioned briefly that this film is based on the play, which is based on the true story about the real life group singing for the troops during the 60s. So, in real life, though, there were three members of the group, but in the film, they made it four. I just wondered why they make that choice.
Mm.
I don't know, but
Okay, so I had no idea about that one. That's a new information. Um, I just watched the movie last week, so it's really still fresh in my mind. Really haven't
mm-hmm,
done any research about the movie, but I did read about after the credits. They did show us. Post the credit. I mean, they show us
mm-hmm,
little highlights and stories about how their real life characters, real life. I mean, like the real life people ended up in their lives. Um, why was it that which character did they add to the story?
so it seemed like though, like for because like for the stage play, like they use like the real life members' names, but in the film, it's all fictional. So I'm
Mm,
not able to tell like which one of them is real or which one was just added, but
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. I'll do
Yeah.
some more research, of course.
And also too, like I just wondered, like, why did the girls had to sing soul music? Like, I get though, like it was a popular genre at the time,
Mm,
but one could argue that country music also has soul too, even though they're kind of shown in different ways. But
mm, yeah.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I thought, to be honest, yeah, it's a bit strange when it comes when you think about it because they're not really black, and also that
mm-hmm,
it's set in Australia.
yeah,
So that part was a bit also a part that I couldn't really connect to. Usually when it's movies like Dreamgirls, The Commitments, other movies such as, with the same kind of plot, uh, you really connect to these characters and you really connect to their pain and everything because it's I think they're just singing their lives.
mm-hmm,
And this is where I kind of disconnected with the characters here and the movie. I
yeah,
couldn't really connect to them that deeply because of, as you said, the song choice and them not being black and them not being, they're not really telling their stories via
mm-hmm,
these songs. It's
mm-hmm,
really where I kind of disconnected with when it comes to the movie. And also another thing that I did not really like about the movie was how the characters seem to be a bit more, they did seem a lot like caricatures at times. They were
mm-hmm,
really, each one of them had these personality, and they were sticking to that personality. It wasn't there were no duality to them. Like
yeah,
one is either angry or controlling, like you said, and you thought, I was saying, well, she was more of the older sister, but I think you were kind of right in saying that she was kind of like the mother.
yeah,
And one is like the talented one, the other one is like, the white skinned girl who's struggling with accepting herself, and
mm-hmm,
one is just, sleeping around.
yeah.
And it's just they had these roles assigned to them, and they were kind of just sticking to these roles. I would have preferred if they were like more well-rounded personalities, and if they had more in depth to their personalities. The older one, obviously, they kind of gave her that opportunity to kind of have that character development, but not much for the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish, yeah, I just wish the characters weren't like, more like caricatures that
Yeah.
they portrayed out to be. I think that's one of the things I disliked about the movie.
Yeah, because I wonder like if the director or producer, I don't
Mm,
know who made the decision, but I just wonder if they did that like for comedic reasons.
probably could be. I actually have no idea, but as I said as well, when did this movie came out as well? I think that kind of plays into it as well.
Yeah, because it came out back in
2012. Yeah.
2012. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think right now, if we compare movies now and movies then, it's different, so much different.
Hmm.
Even my preferences for movies have changed. A lot of things have changed. I
Oh
think
yeah.
if I've watched this movie back in 2012,
Hmm.
or like around that time, I would have probably loved it very much,
Hmm.
and probably would not have thought much to of it. Much, well, it didn't really wouldn't probably not have thought much into it. But now I think, because my preferences have changed and I can see
Hmm.
everything else clearly as well.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's definitely not, I think, a movie that I would watch again.
Yeah, yeah, cause certainly, yeah, like time, like it could kind of like change like your opinions about movies. Cause
Yes,
maybe yeah, like 10 years ago you could have loved it, while like now, like maybe like you still quite love it, but at the same time, like there's questions about it. So,
exactly.
mm-hmm,
And also, like, it was also insightful seeing the bit about the Aboriginals and the stolen generations. I think that part was very interesting and insightful. And if I would watched it then, I would have probably done more research and I've been more, informed about this part.
mm-hmm. And yeah, like also to just speak about the music. So, as I mentioned, they use a lot of like the copyrighted songs that most people will be familiar with. So I just wondered, like, why not make original songs than being simply a jukebox musical? So,
Mm,
Like Moulin Rouge is example of a jukebox musical, but is able to like do the songs in a way that's like refreshing than just do how it was performed. But
exactly.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I completely understand where that came from because the songs just sound exactly the same as you would hear it anywhere else. It was just, I mean, it was just like a cover.
yeah, exactly, yeah, mm-hmm,
So yeah, I mean, it was interesting hearing those songs. Don't get me wrong, because I really love these songs.
mm-hmm,
Probably haven't listened to them in a long time, so it was interesting as well, listening to them and everything. But it didn't really give me that initial connections that I had with Dreamgirls, for example,
mm-hmm,
because they made
exactly,
their
yeah,
songs. For example, Jennifer Hudson. Well, they had some original songs in the movie, which helped, and also
mm-hmm,
the songs made it their own.
yes, mm-hmm,
But I I could not say the same about the Sapphires. But then that could
yeah,
also play into them not being African Americans, them not having that same, passion and story and feeling the hurt and feeling all the lyrics and all of that. That maybe that's why they
mm-hmm,
couldn't make the song their own, because it wasn't initially their idea to even go soul. It was,
yes,
the manager.
yes, which yeah, we'll get on into that a bit later, but
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Then I tend to go. I tend to do this all the time when I have a conversation about a movie or when I'm discussing anything. I
Hmm.
go. I just get over myself. I just go ahead. I mean,
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
yeah,
So, like, what else I want to point out? So, like, at the beginning, like, there was a whole, like, 60s montage at the beginning. I thought that wasn't necessary because we already know this is 1968. So, they didn't really have to show, like, events that happened during that year to know it's that
yeah.
year in the movie.
Mm, yeah, true. I didn't really pay that much attention to that bit, to be honest. But I mean, I paid attention to it, but it's like now that I think about it, I didn't really have that kind of thought. But now that you
Hmm.
mention it, it makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, Perhaps maybe for people that don't know much history, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm sure everyone is aware of the major events that happened during that time. So,
True,
like,
true,
we
true, true.
don't. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Yeah,
Hmm.
I have no idea why that was why I didn't think of it as well. Perhaps when I was watching it, I was like, okay, interesting. Okay, let me just get to the middle of the story. Let's see what happens next. Because
Hmm.
nowadays I feel like my patience have also increased. Like I don't have there's lack of patience when it comes to watching movies,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to musicals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I have to get back on it, and my tastes have changed from
Mm-hmm.
drastically.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think from when I was young. But yeah, I think what was also interesting for me was that the fact that it was an Australian film. I don't usually watch Australian films.
Mm-hmm.
I think I never watch Australian films. So this is very interesting hearing their accents. Interesting to find out that the history about the Aboriginals in Australia. All these things were kind of like interesting for me because it was just finding out. It was just very insightful.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah. And so I want to get into Dave. Yeah. So even though like his performance is good, I had some issues with his character. So as you mentioned earlier, he told the girls to sound blacker. I'm kind of like, what?
Exactly.
Because like
It
you're
left a bad taste in my mouth.
yeah, because he's white and he's telling the girls to sound black. Like, that was a bit cringe right there.
Exactly. It was really cringe. And it also kind of plays into, I think, like managers back in the days, or even now, you've got all these white managers that manage either rappers or black artists,
Mm-hmm.
and they always tell them what needs to be done, but because they're the ones in control, they're the ones that got the money, the production company and all of that. So we
Mm-hmm.
never end up questioning their intentions. We never end up questioning the things that they say, such as when this guy was telling them, can you sound blacker? Even
Mm-hmm.
they didn't even question it themselves, because they were thinking probably like, okay, this guy is giving us an opportunity here, and let's just roll with it. He's got the money. Well, he doesn't haven't got the money, but he gave them an opportunity, and they just went for it because the money was, interesting. The
Yeah.
money was good.
Mm-hmm. But he's not really like a manager because when we first see him, he's like a MC like of this bar, and that since
Mm,
he was the only one that liked the girls' like performance, I guess the girls they decided to like hire him like as like a manager, but he doesn't have like the
yeah.
skills to do so.
Yes, exactly. I didn't, because he was a broken down kind of a mess when they
Yes.
first met him, and he probably like burned down every possible bridge that linked him to music. And I think they mentioned about like he doesn't have a job or his home as well in Great Britain, or
Mm-hmm.
any self-respect to himself as well. He hasn't got any of that. But
Yeah.
I think when he just heard the girls and he was like, okay, they're the real deal, and I don't care how amateur they are. They're going to be stars, and I'm going to be the one who's going to make them become the stars. Basically, I think he's just like cocktail writing on their their voices and their um, because I think when it comes to girls like that, they couldn't have just done this themselves,
Mm-hmm.
especially being Aboriginals, being dark skinned, and during the racism that was happening at that time, they wouldn't have reached where they reached eventually. I think the reason that they did that was obviously because of their voice, but I think it's because this white guy helped them, and that's because everybody would listen to the white guy and not to these girls.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So in a way, like he is kind of like the white savior trope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because without them, I think, I mean, now if it was, if it this happened now, perhaps they could have made it without his help.
Yeah.
At that
Exactly.
time, they needed someone like him, because who would have given them a chance? Nobody would.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So like also too, I wanted to point out. So apparently, like his character does not exist in real life. So the
Oh,
director. So yeah. So the director said that quote. That's where we went a bit Argo. So in reference to the Ben Affleck film. Because he also
okay.
said he found it liberating as a writer
Mm,
to expand the number of characters, as
yeah.
it made the dynamics of the story richer.
Okay. So do you know who actually was their manager in real life, or who booked those gigs for them?
So apparently, like they never had a manager. So from what I was able to gather, like they were performing together, and then apparently um a band, I guess, that was accompanying them, like introduced them like to like the soul music, and then from there, that's when they decided to like sing in that genre and that sort of stuff. So there was no manager as far as I could tell. None of that.
Okay, that's very interesting given everything that I just said right now. So I am really interested. I'm right now very much intrigued to see how they made it, because at that time it must have been quite difficult for females, and especially if you're not white, to reach that kind of success in the music industry. So
Mm-hmm.
I was really, that's, it's very intriguing. I would like to actually find out now who
Yeah.
was their actual manager, or if they really did not have any managers.
Yeah, because I think as far as I'm able to gather, like they didn't have a manager. Because I think they were just essentially performing together.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, very
yeah.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a last point that I have is that the romantic relationship with Dave and Gail for me just
Yeah,
came out of nowhere. Like,
nowhere. Exactly. Very
what?
cringy, cheesy. I did not like it because even the chemistry was not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if they were going off with this kind of romantic romantic direction where it started off as hate, and there was this that, like, they just started, they were just arguing all the time, and then it turned into attraction, I could have gotten it, because
Mm-hmm.
I think they did that with recently. I think, have you watched Bridgerton?
Yes, I've seen it.
So if you the season 2, I think, where Anthony and this other lady, where they are really on each other's cases and they hate each other in the beginning, but that kind of turns into a really, I mean, that's where they've got so many things in common and they're attracted
Mm-hmm.
to each other. I get that. That's
Mm-hmm.
understandable. But this one, it really did not make any sense.
Yeah, because I would say that like out of the members of the group, he spends more like time with her because of I guess her role in the group, but there was no like setup of them like having sparks. Like sure, maybe they were butting heads, but there was no
Yeah.
indication that they were into each other. I guess until the
Yeah.
very end. So
Yes. Yes. It was very it just out of the blue, to be honest. I did not see that coming at all. And I still, even after they kissed and after they got together, I still couldn't see their chemistry.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was completely, I think they just wanted to add a romantic feel to it, or just to kind of put it in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it didn't make sense for me at all.
Yeah,
I think it would have
exactly.
been better. I think it would have been better if they just stayed as friends, like very good friends that
Yes.
confided in each other and understood each other, shared the pain that they went through with Vietnam and the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think it would have made more sense if they just stayed good friends.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, but it's, yeah, yeah, that part was just out of the blue, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a choice, but
It was exactly. I mean, I
mm-hmm.
think if we're talking about the whole movie, it was probably like a man's view of what women should do.
Yes.
And that's how it seemed. The woman, they appeared to make choices, but all as a direct result of what men want them to do. Manager, the lover, the girl, the one that was in the lover, the
Mm-hmm.
boyfriends, the soldiers. Every female action seemed to be like as a response to the man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it
Exactly.
had like no, it was lacking charm for me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's pretty much it what I had for the lowlight sections. If there is anything else you want to add to this one that we haven't mentioned.
I think that there was a scene. I also thought it was not necessary, because it didn't really play. How they spoke about racism and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I feel like they were also trying to jam as much as they could into these topics, because it didn't seem natural. There was a
Mm-hmm.
part where there was a soldier who got bombed, and the white soldier basically, and he was refusing to be treated by the black doctor or the black guy.
Mm-hmm.
It was truly harrowing for me. I really didn't like that part
Yeah.
because I don't feel like it fit into this movie.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just the part I just remembered right now. That's the one I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I forgot to like mention. So there were like some few like unanswered questions for me. So first one I had is that why does Kay decide to join the girls when she has the friction with Gail?
Yeah,
That just came out of nowhere. And also too, there was one point where someone offers like Julie like the chance to have a solo career,
yeah,
but we never get
but
an
we
answer.
never
Yeah.
exactly. I thought they never mentioned that. It just kind of left to interpretation, or I don't know what really happens. But then they end up telling us the real life stories of the actual characters or the actual people. And I think with her, she leaves the whole thing behind. Was that it?
Yeah.
She leaves the whole
Yeah.
thing behind and
Mm-hmm.
just raises her son. With the sorry, what was the thing that you mentioned first? You mentioned something that you
Uh,
didn't get back to.
so I think was what was it with Kay? Yeah, like we don't get why she decides to join them, like when she had the bad blood with Gail. If that's her name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think um with that as well, I did think that was very sudden. I thought they were gonna reconcile first, have a conversation, or I don't know, her convince Gail to convince Kate, hey, you should be in the group. But there was none of that. She just comes and joins in immediately. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought that was strange as well,
Yeah.
because it was out of nowhere. She just comes in and joins. And I think they tried to get over it, but then in the middle of the movie, they get into an altercation
Mm-hmm.
where they just get into a physical altercation as well.
Yeah.
And maybe I think maybe in the beginning they kind of brushed it aside and they were like, hey, let's just sing together and become famous. And but the I think what Gail felt for Kate was so strong that it couldn't be hidden throughout the movie. So that's why they had that physical altercation. It was just that
Mm-hmm.
conflict. They had
Yeah.
to have that. And then we get back to the backstory where we find out that Gail was the one that was taking care of her. She
Mm-hmm.
had to be the one that was responsible for her. Hence why she feels so strongly about her.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, although they didn't really explain it in that sense, you kind of gauge how
Mm-hmm.
why she ended up joining. Not why she ended up joining, but because they also talk about how when they were young they used to sing as a group, all four of
Yes.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of for them it's more of a memory as well, them singing together. It reflects back to when times were better before the stolen generation and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, because essentially there were some choices in this film, yeah, that were questionable, but it is
Yeah,
what it
I mean,
is. Yeah.
that's true. In general, I do like biopics, and I mean, I'm even fonder of those about people who struggle to become successful. I've seen a lot of musicals like that. Ray, What's Love Got to Do with It, and such and such. This one, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same as the other ones, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we could segue on to the trivia section where essentially some fun facts about the film. So as I pointed out earlier, this movie is based off the play, which is based off the true story about the '60s group called the Sapphires. So they only had three members, not four. And when they were invited to sing for the troops in Vietnam, apparently, two of the members declined to perform due to their anti war stance, so the
Oh,
remaining member drafted her sister to help her out.
okay, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Which two do you remember?
Um, So the members, there's Laurel Robinson, who's the mother of the screenwriter Tony Briggs, yeah, Beverly
Okay.
Briggs, and Naomi Mayers. So Briggs and Mayers, they declined to perform. So Robinson, she enlisted her sister Louis Peeler to join her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then apparently they performed vocals for a New Zealand band, and then
Yeah.
that's when apparently the band introduced them to soul music.
Oh, okay. I mean, I wish that the movie took that kind of direction. The real life story seems more
Yeah,
interesting than the movie. So,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I wish they stuck to it.
Exactly.
Very interesting to find that about.
And a final note is that with the film, it premiered at the 2012 Cannes Film Festival, where it received
Yes.
a 10-minute standing ovation.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I didn't think. I mean, now maybe it's not worthy of that kind of
Yeah.
but back then I don't want to say anything too mean, but I mean like I think at that time maybe it was prevalent at that time. The
Mm-hmm.
story was
Yeah.
needed,
Mm-hmm.
and at that time, what other musicals were coming out? Maybe musicals were more popular than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
More right now, it's more of a crime documentary, thriller,
Yeah.
action. Those are the kind of stories or movies that seem to be very popular. But right at that time, I could see why, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So lastly, like I usually like leave with this question: should this movie be rediscovered? So should this film
Mm.
be recommended? So I could let you start off first.
Personally, I would not recommend it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think watching the trailer would be enough to get the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it kind of plays into how trailer used to be made back in the days, which kind of tells you the whole story. The trailer was super long. It told me the whole story. And even after watching the trailer, I said, do I actually need to watch the story? Because I feel like I know the whole movie right now. But I
Mm-hmm.
still watched it, and I still would probably not recommend it. I would recommend other movies like it, like Dreamgirls, Commitments,
Mm-hmm.
Ray, a thing called Love,
Mm-hmm.
movies as such. However,
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see a documentary where they stick to the actual facts that happened in their real lives, because that's more interesting than the movie. And I feel like that I would connect more with the real life story.
Mm-hmm.
Documentary, I would definitely watch it.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm gonna say like it's yeah, you should check it out, but I would say to an extent. So I would say check out for the performances because the cast is solid. The musical
Yes,
performances were fun, even though it's just pretty much karaoke. And
yes.
yeah, and
I
also
was I was singing along to the whole song. So that I mean, I was having my own karaoke in my bed. That was
mm.
nice.
And like also too, it brings awareness to the serious issues that happen in Australia that people could relate to in ways, but is also able to bring out the fun moments at the same time.
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So where can people follow you, or do you have any upcoming projects you want to share?
I'm currently writing a project with my friend. We've written the the pilot. We talk because we're both come from a very strong culture rich background, and we're both Muslims. We'd like to highlight these stories about Muslims and hijabis, and we'd love to see more of these representations on screen, without it being too much kind of like normalized. And those are the stories we're really interested in, and hopefully soon. I do hope we finish everything soon and it gets picked up or I get managed. So I am doing a lot of things at the same time. Writing is not my only thing. As you mentioned, a teacher, a tech enthusiast, work part-time as a network engineer, and I also write whenever I have the time. This was really fun to do. It actually kind of reminded me of why I'm passionate about writing movies and watching movies. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. You can usually find me on Twitter, although I'm not that much active on Twitter. However, I will leave you my details. You can also find me on Instagram. The name is H0THAN. That's my Instagram. So it's lowercase H0THAN, Hodan. That's just my personal Instagram. And I think it's the same on Twitter. Let me just recheck because I have a really bad memory. If you could just give me. I think it's the same at H0THANATION. So at Hodan Nation, that's my Twitter. And yeah, if you would like to DM or just simply follow me, see what I'm up to, feel free to do that. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. We're looking forward to your upcoming projects. Like that sounds fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So you could follow myself on Twitter and Instagram at Nomfanelo. You could follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RD Movies Pod, and you could use the hashtag RD Movies Pod. You could answer the featured question on Spotify. Like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform. And you could submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com. Or you could leave a voice message on anchor.fm/rdmoviespod. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Until next time.